After 2 years, the U.S. ambassador to China is stepping down. Gary Locke said in a statement released Wednesday that he wants to return to the United States to be with his family sometime early next year. CCTV's Jessica Stone takes a look at Locke's somewhat controversial tenure as ambassador and what he accomplished in the post. She's in our Washington newsroom. Jessica?
And Mike, you know, Gary Locke came into office as the ambassador as a low-key, coffee-drinking American official, the first Chinese-American, by the way, to serve as ambassador. But he figured very prominently into two major political scandals in China. Already, the U.S. State Department is pushing back heavily on any idea that he stepped down on any other terms but his own.
I, Gary Locke.
I, Gary Locke.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
Gary Locke became the U.S. ambassador to China 2 years ago, armed with extensive experience as a U.S. Secretary of Commerce and a former state governor with vast exporting history to China. Yet 6 months into his tenure, a U.S. consulate gave shelter to Chongqing Police Chief Wan Lijun, who shared information about the murder of a British businessman, setting off China's biggest political scandal in years. 2 months later, Locke himself gave shelter to blind Chinese dissident Chen Guangcheng, turning the attention of the Western international community to that story rather than the high-level U.S.-China meetings taking place in Beijing. Locke gave interviews about the situation.
Again, this was his decision, and he indicated to us what he wanted as conditions before he would leave the embassy. He had the option of staying in the embassy for years if necessary.
Congressman Rick Larson has known Locke since his days as Washington state governor.
U.S. foreign policy has been very clear, no matter what country we're dealing with, that human rights is an important part of U.S. foreign policy. And from our perspective, the case of Chen was about human rights.
It's apparent now.
Now, news that Locke is resigning his post as ambassador, returning to his family in the U.S. early next year. In a statement, Locke says, quote, "While our bilateral relationship is a complex one, I remain confident in the ability of our leaders to manage differences."
Since becoming the U.S. ambassador to China, Mr. Gary Locke made active efforts in fostering China-U.S. communications and cooperation. We would like to pay tribute to him.
Former National Security Council spokesperson Ben Chang says Locke laid significant groundwork in the bilateral relationship.
I think he helped flesh out and give further substance to the many tracks that are developing between our two countries, including the economic track, if you will.
The U.S. State Department says American exports to China grew twice as quickly as they did to the rest of the world under Locke's tenure.
He was able to get a lot of U.S. businesses to come into China, to further invest in China. That was a positive for the Chinese economy.
And a White House spokesperson tells CCTV, quote, "Ambassador Locke has worked tirelessly to advocate for American interests and values, navigating one of the most complex and important bilateral relationships we have. And throughout his tenure on the administration, he has shown unwavering support to provide Americans more economic opportunity." The White House also saying that the U.S. mission in Beijing is one of its most important, and the president will look to fill the position as soon as possible. Mike?
Jessica, thanks so much. China's